I'm Andrew. I work with some of the folks here at Launch Scout. This isn't going to be like super specific to JavaScript or anything. So sorry if to disappoint, but hopefully it's informative at least. Let's see, here. I guess I'll share my screen. So let's see where to start. Some of this I'm going to have difficulty showing off because, of course, in classic fashion, it stopped working when I went to check it this morning. So trying to re-download a giant model in the background and that kind of stuff. Maybe this will be done by the time I get to the end and we can illustrate that. But anyway, so yeah. There's, I think everybody's heard of ChatGPT at this point, and there's kind of been this pretty large explosion of like open source work next to that or adjacent to it. One of the cool things I have found, this is the one that I was attempting to show off. This is called LocalAI. It's pretty easy to install. The idea is that it stands up a web server that you can point things that are expecting to go to OpenAI, and you can just point them to your local host. And it's like nearly API compatible. It's not like 100% and stuff. This is all, slightly less polished, for lack of a better word, I guess. It's going to require some tying things together and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the idea here is just git clone this. This kind of gives you the advantage of using basically any model that you want. There's this whole list, dozens upon dozens upon dozens of these things that have been trained for different purposes on different, text. Some of them are uncensored to get, less of that. I'm sorry, I can't do that because I have to be super helpful and friendly kind of stuff. These are a bit slower at the moment. Like I wouldn't necessarily call this production ready or anything. When you're running it on your computer locally, I mean, it really, you could heat your coffee up on it. It's requires a lot of horsepower. Some of these also, there's a bunch of these I found. This one here is another kind of, a lot of these are essentially just like UIs that, point to whatever model you want to point them to. I don't know if anyone's familiar with like the stable diffusion side of this stuff. There's a very similar idea where you get this kind of playground. You can, this one has all these different models built into it. Makes it pretty easy to just like install and run stuff. But this one's a little bit more complex because there's, trying to find it here. This one lets you use, so there's a couple of different versions of that concept of like pretending to be the OpenAI API. I guess there's a nice picture for it here. This binding zoo. So this one says auto GPTQ. That's another of those kind of similar things to this local AI. Just to pretend to be a OpenAI, So yeah, I guess here's another one. This one's probably the simplest and easiest to use right now. It's just free GPT UI. It's like a one command to run it. I do have this server going up here. Click. So yeah, same idea here. Just run.py on this Python file, and it stands up a server here for us. So if I go to this URL, get our own little private GPT. Scientists trust atoms because they make up everything. Ha ha ha. And yeah, so just to prove it to you, I suppose it comes up here. You can see in the logs. Just posts to this backend API. It goes to this. Yeah, it's not nice in the logs, but anyway, it's just going to that local host. It's not going anywhere other than my computer. This one's a bit less flexible. We only get a few models to pick from. Can't really like add our own like those other ones. So these are, I mean, fine. They're all, you know, I think these are maybe generally better for like conversational kind of stuff than they're going to be for, you know, coding kind of purposes. I think there's some of these other ones that are more focused towards code generation than text generation necessarily. I know these like wizard ones are, I think they're trained on like stories, essentially a lot of these. I think fast Vicuna, these are some of the more codey ones. There's a better list that I lost that has benchmarks. I'll get links together to all this stuff at the end and get them posted in a nice place that you guys can find them again. So yeah, what can we do with all this stuff? There's some things that tie into the ecosystem. So there's this GPT for all. Wait, that's the wrong thing. There's auto GPT for all. So auto GPT, the idea of that is it's like a GPT that feeds itself. So you like start with a command that generates prompts that generates other prompts to try to, you know, get the models to have some sort of train of thought or whatever their equivalent would be. So that's pretty cool. The problem with this is that it gets wildly expensive when you're charging like per token, you know, because it's this explosion of complexity. You ask it one simple thing and it generates like dozens of prompts that generate, you know, dozens of other prompts themselves kind of stuff. And it kind of can get out of control cost wise. But yeah, if you're not paying OpenAI, you can just run it as many times as you want. The results are honestly not as good. Like we're not going to get GPT-4 level stuff here yet. We're kind of lagging behind, but I think the open source stuff is easily as capable as, you know, the 3.5 turbo prior leap was. So I'm sure it won't be long before we're 2023. But yeah, there's a lot of things. I lost the link. So GPT-4, essentially its big leap was like tying, you know, 8 or 9 of these separate models together, and it's kind of doing its own auto GPT business. So, I mean, you have the capability now to do that kind of stuff too. There's like LangChain and all those things to tie these models together. Theoretically, I know this Lord of LLMs here will let you, like if I wanted to rent a really powerful computer in the cloud to run this on, I could, you know, point my local things at my very powerful computer in the cloud running this instead of OpenAI, you know, so you're still in control of it. There's still a cost there and stuff. You need at least like 6-ish gigabytes of video RAM. So you're gonna need like a pretty beefy graphics card if you're Windows, Linux. I think the M1 Max, most of this stuff honestly kind of assumes you're running that and then makes anything else harder. So if you have a Mac, you'll probably have a pretty easy time too. Let's see, I did have this working. There's some like, I run NeoVim as my text editor, and there's some really good ChatGPT integration kind of plugins. The there was a point in time you could point this at like a local host version of OpenAPI, and they seem to have disallowed that for the time being. I'm not sure why. But anyway, I mean, you can like have this stuff built into your editor really nicely. And theoretically, I could have this, point to myself instead of OpenAI. So we can just pretend for now. Okay, something went wrong. Anyway, yeah, like I said, sorry, I was trying to fix all this like scramble this morning. I had it working, and when I went over it all last night. But this one lets you do things like you can highlight a block of code here, and I could say like explain this code, and it's not working because of reasons, but yeah, pretend it did. It's pretty cool if it does. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions or comments, concerns? Has this just been a rambling mess? Anything else I can try to explain for people? I mean, there's plenty of cool new things coming up in this ecosystem right here. Like this, you can't necessarily tie it into the, not OpenAI stuff. A lot of this does assume you're using like the real OpenAI. But anyway, we're getting to things where we can like, create very customized versions of these kinds of things. So like this, you can feed it practically anything, and it kind of is attempting to become, your second brain. If you give it access to like your calendar and your emails and stuff, you can just kind of conversationally ask like, what do I have to do today? Or what are my most important, use your imagination. But eventually, I feel like there's going to be enough of a push towards, places other than OpenAI being in control of all this stuff. That might be like the best of the best, the leading, state of the art is always potentially going to be, on the edge, on the cloud or whatever. But if you want like capabilities very similar to that and to have more control over it and not give it to another company, that's also somewhat possible now, and will, there's continued efforts in that direction, and it's going to only get better from here, I think.
I have two questions.
Shoot.
I guess one of them is that last thing you were talking about there made me think of the I think it was like a leaked thing from Google where the guy was talking about basically the idea that essentially like there is no barrier to entry for open source AI, and it's just a matter of time till they catch up, and trying to stay ahead
Yeah,
of them is essentially a losing battle. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I thought that was super interesting.
yeah, that's what it seems like. The real barrier to entry right now is like money and hardware.
Yes.
It's yeah,
Right.
once that stuff, yeah. I mean, give it 2 generations and we'll have GPT-4 on our phone and GPT-6 at OpenAI running. It's like it's only going to get better, and there is a very low barrier to entry. Yeah, I mean, it's never gonna, I don't want to say never, because in some ways some of this stuff is better, if you consider the like unfiltered, uncensored kinds of models, that could be argued to be better or worse depending on your, beliefs on AI alignment and that kind of stuff. But it
Depending on what you're
seems,
doing.
yeah, depending on what you're doing, I don't know, sometimes it's annoying, especially if you just want stuff locally. It's like I'm not hurting anyone by doing this stuff. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but yeah, there's potential for different models than just the one you get when you pay OpenAI money.
I guess that that whole thing about it being like a low barrier to entry, open source, and all that. What does that kind of mean for like the proliferation of AI companies? Do you think they're going to be more like centralized and bought out, or like?
To me,
I-
it seems like AI is more of a tool than something to hang a company around. Like if you're building a company that uses AI in a cool way, I'm not sure honestly how to
I
answer the
think,
question.
yeah, I think making it easier for other people to do something useful with AI is probably still a great business model. I think like owning the best AI model like ChatGPT or OpenAI, I kind of wonder if their days are numbered because the open source models will catch up with them eventually. But
Yeah, I think
I
that's
really,
I think that's a good answer.
I
Tooling
am.
is like always the, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I noticed you kind of. I think I I I was away for part of the talk, so I might not. I might have missed it, but I don't know. Did you? Seems like most of the stuff you're shown is like kind of more Python-y. Did you talk about like Hugging Face or any of the like live book Elixir stuff?
I have not, no. I actually didn't get to try to tie in the live book Elixir stuff with this. I know it does have like Hugging Face integration. You could probably do something to tell it to go to, localhost instead of OpenAI / the same thing. But I
Yeah,
did
it
not
runs everything
get that
perfectly.
far. Yeah. Wait,
What is
so it does.
what is
There's, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, what is the live book Elixir stuff?
I can show you.
So yeah, Elixir is like our like go-to programming language at Launch Scout, and Elixir is is a language first started for building web apps, but they've added a lot of great support for AI ML, and one of the things they can do is pull in any model that you want from Hugging Face and just sort of like let you start using it. And it's pretty slick. Honestly, it might be easier just to like Google and watch some of the great videos out there already. If you want to jump in the Discord, even though this is Elixir, not JavaScript, I'll happily drop some links to videos in there for anybody that's interested. And then if you decide to get super interested, there's a whole like Elixir Discord that you can join to find out more and stuff. And if you get into Elixir, but yeah, live book and its support for Hugging Face models. Axon, I guess, is the specific sort of project that does it. But yeah, Elixir, live book, Hugging Face, those are the things that kind of work together. Which you like just like
Thanks. Yeah.
grab a
Appreciate it.
model and start using it.
And it looks like live book is the Elixir equivalent to Python notebooks.
Yes.
Correct. Absolutely 100% rip off of Jupyter notebooks. Yep.
Except better in like every way. So
Well, Elixir's better. Absolutely.
even just these are just essentially these are just like markdown files that the live book server knows what to do with. So you don't get that like a Jupyter notebook is just a big giant mess of like Python. You can't read it nicely. These are just, you could read this like a file and it would make sense, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. I haven't done enough Python stuff that I would even know that to compare.
Yeah, the experience of using it is pretty similar to a Jupyter notebook. I mean, they're fairly equivalent, but just the ecosystem around it is way better in my opinion. You can, yeah, version control and everything's much easier.
Andrew, do you have a, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if anyone else had any questions.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you have a feel for like what are some of the top open source models out there?
The ones that I have had the best luck with are these Wizard Vicuna ones. They seem to perform pretty well in my limited granted experience. There's this GPT for all. So there's a lot of the ecosystem is a tiny bit fragmented, right? There's all these different types of quantization and stuff. I know the stuff that I'm using wants these GGMLs. And then there's like how far they're quantized down is relevant in like how much video memory they're going to use, but also the more they quantize them, the worse they perform. So it's kind of like a balance. I think it would just, anyone that wanted to do this, if they were trying to seriously use it for a purpose, is probably going to want to try out a few of them, because I think they all benchmark differently on, different tasks.
Yeah, that makes sense. If we were starting from a model on Hugging Face that we could download, maybe I missed it, but can you go over like just a high level process on how you get that up and running?
Yeah. Just finish. I might be able to. Okay, so yeah, this one I just downloaded this GGML GPT for all model. Just keeping it simple to follow the README here. So we get that model. This one wants you to
So LocalAI and GPT for all are not the same thing?
accurate, yeah.
Okay.
I will put together a list of like what all this stuff means. Sorry to bounce around so much. I'm trying to find the right README here that I was looking at. This one, that's right. So, okay, so we get this model. There's a template to copy over. And that just looks like this. So this is kind of, you can edit these, but this is, the prompt that gets sent with your question. So you put in this and this gets sent over. But yeah, that's basically it. So now I should just be able to, let me see if this actually will work now. So once I copied that, I just, oh wait, yeah, so I downloaded it to, I think it was models. Yeah, just to this models directory in the local AI, repo that we cloned. And then I should just be able to run Docker compose up. Or not. Oh, something's already using it. Curl command here. So now if I curl localhost 8080 and I ask it, how are you? I think it's going to give me a dumb response, but it should work. I am doing well, thank you. What about you? So this is the one that I wanted to have working when I started, because I can tie that AI plugin that I was showing you in my editor over to here. So as far as it knows, it's asking OpenAI, how are you? And my computer responds with this, and no one is the wiser. And basically all you would do to ask for a different model is you would just download it into that models directory, and your data in your curl command here just uses a different model.
Okay, so you're cloning a GitHub repo which has the model and the weights in it,
So
and wrapped up in a Docker image file, and then you're spinning up a Docker instance, which then exposes a REST endpoint.
yes, accurate. Yeah, so this LocalAI is I'll put a link up, but that's that's this that pretends to be OpenAI. So it stands up a web server, like Flask, I think. And then you download basically any model you want off of Hugging Face into the models directory here inside of LocalAI. And then when you do the actual curl to your local host, you would just say model something else that's in that folder. If you got 5 in there, you could send 5 requests, same everything, but different model, and get 5 responses.
Okay, so the models are pretty interchangeable. So if there's tomorrow a new model that beats all the state-of-the-art metrics, then you can just download that into the models folder, change the string here, and somehow free GPT-web UI knows how to talk to it. So like the interface for all these different models must be standardized somehow so that they're interchangeable.
Yes, that's a little bit above my current level of knowledge to know like how that all works. But yeah, I know there's this GGML type of model that there's 2 or 3 standards. I can't remember some of the other ones, but they basically just different ways of compressing the information, I guess. And yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the info.
Oh, of course, yeah. Does anybody else have anything? I know this has been kind of free form. I appreciate everybody's patience. I think that's about all I have, if there aren't any more questions.
I was just going to chip in, if it helps. I found what seems to be a definitive model ranking is the Open LLM Leaderboard on Hugging Face. That it's a little controversial to rank language models because they're so dynamic. It's really hard to judge which one's like quote unquote the best. But it seems like the Open LLM Leaderboard is a pretty rigorous evaluation and ranking of them.
Yeah, I know there's like human equivalents and all different kinds of metrics, and they run them on. Yeah, there's some pretty standardized or becoming standardized ways of testing and ranking these things. But yeah, I think it would still, like I said, behoove anyone that was trying to take this pretty seriously to try out several and come up with your own benchmarks. I don't know, it's some of it's subjective. It's hard to say one is better than the other just by interacting with it. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of just get a comprehensive picture, I think.
What was the name of the ranking thing again?
It's on Hugging Face. So Hugging Face is kind of like GitHub for language model stuff. So it's, yeah, you don't need to know all this, but just Open LLM Leaderboard.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, I'll post some links to all of these things, probably in the Discord when we're done.
Do you have a feel? So I'm using ChatGPT right now, and the costs can add up, especially when you have like multiple passes, like you were talking about, where it can kind of think about how to solve the problem. And so I'm very interested in moving to self-hosting open source models, and I'm thinking of it in terms of 3 criteria. One is how good is the model in terms of its answers, and then 2 is how fast it responds, and then 3 is the cost of actually running it locally, or maybe not locally, but on like an EC2 instance or something, some sort of cloud resource.
Sure.
Not OpenAI. Do you have? I know that it would take a lot of research to have knowledge on all 3 of those metrics, but do you have like a gut feel for any of those?
I know that 1 and 2 are kind of pretty intimately tied together. The better, quote unquote, your answers that you can expect, the longer it's going to take to generate them. So it is always a balance of quality versus speed, I think. And that's something that comes up on a lot of these. There's different so you'll see like 6B, 13B, 30B after a lot of them. That's the number of parameters that the model was trained on. So like the smaller the model, the generally faster the inference speed, but the worse the results will be. So it's a kind of a game of finding like the right size, the right one that was quantized in the right way that, works with your particularly shaped data the best. So yeah, it's kind of just hard to say. I think it's like one of those things where, pick one of the 3 to focus on or whatever, maybe 2, but yeah.
That makes sense. And if nobody else has a question, sorry to dominate.
You're really not.
Just out of curiosity, what are you using? Are you using this for work?
Yes and no. I personally have been using ChatGPT like things just in more personal leaning stuff. Got a couple libraries I've been working on, kind of thing that I would feel comfortable using it, but like client projects, that kind of stuff, I feel like there's still too many unknowns to really rely on this stuff very heavily. But then again, it's like, yeah, it's different, like say feeding code into it versus like asking it questions. Because there are some times where it might be helpful to type in, anonymized versions of whatever code I'm working on or whatever to ask it questions in that regard. But as far as like a lot of the really cool stuff, like the, just straight up code generation or like, feed my code base into this model and ask it questions about my whole repo, I haven't really played with that kind of stuff too much for work yet. Just because, like I said, it feels like it's bigger than me, like when it's involving, client projects and things.
Yeah. Yeah, I always have a GPT tab up on my browser, and I find myself using it probably 15 times a day, and ranging from please write this function to answering business questions. But the please write this function isn't always a time saver. Like sometimes it leads you down a rabbit hole that you don't realize that it's not actually right until much later.
Accurate. Yeah, you can get like subtly wrong stuff that you don't see how subtly wrong it is until a while later. I've also had it be like extremely helpful though in like, if I kind of know what I'm doing, if I'm kind of, pushing the edges of my knowledge or whatever, it can be like, oh, here's this whole module that I didn't know about, or here's it can like, the wrong answers can kind of guide you in a way, but you have to know that they're wrong. So it's a little bit of extra overhead, I think, to use it or rely on it too heavily for, code generation. But then again, there are like other models that are more specifically tuned for that. The language that I generally work in is called Elixir, and it's a little bit more niche. So, less training data. I think eventually there will probably be Elixir code generation module or models in Python and Ruby, and yeah. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe we'll all just standardize on Python because that's what the models speak. Is anyone else using ChatGPT or anything like it in their day-to-day? Or once a week, ever? Just curious.
Yeah, I use it every once in a while.
I've occasionally messed with it, and I mean, obviously for my work, I like work with an AI that's it's not like based on ChatGPT because it came out before the GPT-4 came out. But I know that they've they do integrate some GPT stuff in it somehow or other.
It's very cool.
I used Copilot for like a month, I think. I just did like the free 30 days or free 60 or whatever.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I found that it's it trying to tell me what I wanted to do next was more annoying than useful most of the time. And then it also got in the way of like my linting in some instances. So I don't know. But anyways, the IntelliSense, I mean, not linting. But yeah, so I didn't end up going for a free Copilot. But if Copilot X, where it's on the command line and it's going to be more robust and like if basically if I was able to pull up a terminal and like as if I was navigating to like ChatGPT and starting chat for like just one-off questions, then yeah, I would probably use it more often.
I have gone back and forth on Copilot. I've had the experience you're describing, Ember, where like for the first few times I tried to use it, it would just spout so much noise that I would just turn it back off very quickly. But eventually I crossed a tipping point where like the times that it would be spookily good, like read my mind exactly what I want, were often enough that I was willing to put up with the noise and garbage. And now I leave it on most of the time. I recently had experience where I was doing a Go project, which is a language I had never used before. And it was super helpful because it knew Go when I didn't. And it was definitely a win. I've left it on now that I'm doing Elixir again, and I still have to ignore the noise and be annoyed every once in a while. But so far I haven't turned it back off, but I'm only 2 or 3 days in, so we will see.
I use this open source version of it called Codium. And then I have it tied into Neobim with this plugin. It's like a nice balance because the way I have it configured, I get one result and that's it, which isn't that noisy. So it like tries to guess. It's really good. Like if I so like if I can maybe whip up a dummy example here. Say I wanted to assert has class, wait, something that it'll guess better, has highlighted. Okay, so now if I start coming down here, it knows that I want to try to do that. And it's just a nice autocomplete is really all it is. If it has more information here, it didn't know what I was wanting it to do because yeah, anyway, say I was in like a live view test here and it has things that it uses the context of your code really smart, and it's really good. And just that only having like one, I think two actually results, and they don't auto expand until I tell them to. It's like a nice middle ground of helpful and not noisy. And I actually have found it like more helpful than the actual Copilot version, but again, I haven't tried all that stuff in so long that maybe it's leapfrogged, but it was every bit as helpful as Copilot was, and I don't have to give anyone any money. And it's nicely configurable, like you have more control over it than Copilot, you know. I think it's, I can put a link to this up too. I don't know if anyone is, this one. If anyone's into NeoVim, this is the well, I say distribution, this is my config of NeoVim that has all the AI stuff and the codium. And if anyone's curious, I'll put a link to this up too. Well, thanks for listening to me ramble, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting.
Yeah, thanks so
for being
much.
here.
Thank you.